Have you ever wondered how a person who once seemed like a victim of abuse can eventually become a narcissist themselves? It may seem contradictory at first. How can someone who suffered at the hands of a manipulative, self-absorbed person end up becoming one themselves? The truth is, the dynamics of narcissistic abuse are complex, often involving a cycle that entraps both the abuser and the victim. As we explore this issue, we will uncover how a victim can, over time, become part of a toxic pattern that mirrors the very behavior they once suffered from. Stick around, and by the end of this video, you'll have a deeper understanding of how this unsettling transformation occurs, and why it's crucial to break free from the cycle before it's too late. Welcome to the discussion. Before diving into this complicated topic, I want to invite you to take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this video with others who might benefit from it. Understanding narcissistic abuse and how the victim can transform into a narcissist is vital not only for those trapped in these dynamics, but for anyone interested in self-awareness and healthier relationships. By the end of this video, you will have the tools to recognize the patterns and take action to protect yourself or loved ones. Let's dive into it. What is narcissistic abuse? To fully grasp the transition from victim to narcissist, we first need to understand what narcissistic abuse looks like. Narcissistic abuse is a pattern of manipulation, control, and exploitation by someone with narcissistic tendencies. People who have an inflated sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy, and a need for constant admiration. Narcissists often use emotional manipulation, gaslighting, and devaluation to break down their victims, leaving them confused, isolated, and vulnerable. These individuals feed off the emotional energy of others, often leaving their victims feeling like they're walking on eggshells or constantly trying to earn approval. The initial phase of this relationship may seem charming. Narcissists often have a magnetic quality that draws others in, making them feel loved, validated, and special. This is the love-bombing phase, when the narcissist showers their target with affection and attention. But over time, the mask begins to slip, revealing the manipulative and controlling nature of the person underneath. It's in this phase that the victim begins to question their worth, constantly trying to meet the narcissist's ever-shifting demands. The vulnerability of victims. Now here's where things get interesting. Many victims of narcissistic abuse have experienced trauma in their past, perhaps childhood neglect, emotional abuse, or bullying. These formative experiences make them particularly susceptible to the tactics used by narcissists. In a sense, they are primed to become the perfect targets for narcissistic manipulation. They crave validation and affection, which the narcissist is all too willing to provide, at least at first. Narcissists, like skilled predators, know how to spot this vulnerability and exploit it. Over time, the victim becomes entangled in the narcissist's web. They may feel isolated from friends and family, as the narcissist often seeks to control the victim's social connections. Emotional abuse can take the form of constant belittling, threats, and devaluation, leaving the victim feeling insignificant and trapped. But what's truly disturbing about this cycle is that the longer someone is exposed to narcissistic abuse, the more likely they are to internalize the narcissist's behaviors and patterns. How victims start to mirror narcissistic behavior. It may seem counterintuitive, but victims of narcissistic abuse can over time adopt narcissistic traits themselves. This is not about becoming a narcissist in the classic sense, but rather about how prolonged exposure to toxic behavior can alter a person's sense of self and their way of interacting with others. This shift often happens gradually, making it hard to notice until it's too late. When victims of narcissistic abuse are continually manipulated, gaslighted, or invalidated, they may begin to lose touch with their authentic selves. Their sense of self-worth becomes tied to external validation, just as the narcissist does. Over time, they may adopt some of the narcissist's defense mechanisms, such as emotional withdrawal, self-centeredness, and a lack of empathy for others. They might develop a heightened sensitivity to criticism, making them defensive and dismissive of other people's feelings. It's not that they want to be narcissistic, but rather that they've been conditioned to prioritize their own survival in a world that feels emotionally hostile. Another key factor in this transformation is emotional numbness. Narcissists often train their victims to suppress their feelings and needs, making them feel as if they don't have the right to their own emotions. Over time, victims of narcissistic abuse may stop expressing their true feelings, focusing instead on maintaining a facade of strength or emotional detachment. This can lead to the development of narcissistic traits, as they become more self-reliant and closed off. The desensitization to abuse. One of the most disturbing aspects of this cycle is how victims of narcissistic abuse become desensitized to it. Over time, the emotional and psychological abuse may become so routine that the victim no longer recognizes it as abuse. This phenomenon is known as trauma bonding. It happens when the victim becomes psychologically attached to the abuser through the intermittent reinforcement of positive and negative behaviors. In the case of a narcissistic relationship, the love-bombing phase can be so intense and alluring that it clouds the victim's judgment, even when the narcissist's abusive behavior resurfaces. As the cycle continues, the victim starts to normalize the narcissist's behavior, seeing it as an unfortunate but unavoidable part of the relationship. They may begin to justify or even mimic the narcissist's behavior in an attempt to cope with the emotional toll. Some victims may start to manipulate others in the same way they were manipulated, seeking to reclaim some of the power they've lost. This is where the shift from victim to narcissist can occur. It's a coping mechanism, born out of years of emotional trauma, but it often leads the individual down a dark path of emotional dysfunction. The fear of vulnerability. Victims of narcissistic abuse often fear vulnerability. After years of being emotionally manipulated, their sense of trust has been shattered. They may believe that if they show any sign of weakness or vulnerability, they will be taken advantage of. As a result, they may start to develop a hardened self-protective persona, much like the narcissist they once feared. This armor can lead to narcissistic tendencies, an exaggerated focus on self-preservation, a reluctance to show empathy, and a focus on personal success at the expense of others' feelings. This transformation can be subtle, but it has lasting consequences. Once a person adopts narcissistic traits as a survival mechanism, it becomes difficult for them to break free from the cycle of self-centeredness. They may prioritize their own emotional needs over others, seeing relationships as transactions rather than mutual exchanges of support and care. And just like the narcissist, they may begin to devalue others, especially those who fail to meet their emotional needs or expectations. The unlikely path to healing. If you're watching this video and finding yourself resonating with the patterns of abuse and the transformation from victim to narcissist, know that there is hope. The first step in breaking the cycle is recognizing it. Understanding that narcissistic behavior, whether it's the result of abuse or a deep-seated personality disorder, can be unlearned and healed is crucial. Healing from narcissistic abuse often involves therapy, self-reflection, and re-establishing a sense of self-worth that isn't reliant on external validation. For those who have fallen into the trap of narcissistic behavior themselves, it's important to understand that it's never too late to change. Seeking therapy or support groups, engaging in mindfulness practices, and learning to express vulnerability in healthy ways can help undo the damage caused by narcissistic abuse. It's a slow process, but it is possible to reconnect with your true self and develop healthier, more fulfilling relationships. In the complex and insidious world of narcissistic abuse, the lines between victim and abuser can become blurred. A victim, over time, can find themselves adopting the very behaviors they once despised, trapped in a toxic cycle that feels impossible to escape. But understanding this cycle is the first step toward breaking free. Recognizing how narcissistic abuse works, how it alters both the victim's sense of self and their capacity for empathy, can empower individuals to heal and reclaim their lives. Thank you for sticking with us through this discussion. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who may benefit. Breaking the cycle of narcissistic abuse starts with knowledge and awareness. So let's continue the conversation and spread the message. You're not alone, and healing is always possible.